An elite group of blade craftsmen, known as the Knife Makers Guild, met in the city of New Orleans during the summer of 2000. They were there to discuss the trade, swap blades, and vote on pressing issues the industry faced. One of those issues was the origin of the linerlock. It seems like a rather simple pocket knife feature. The locking mechanism is comprised of a single lock bar, bent inward to put pressure against the face of the blade. When the knife is flicked open, the bar springs out behind the tang, preventing it from closing until the user pushes it out of the way. It's one of the most common locking mechanisms today, used on cheap gas station knives and expensive customs alike. But as the Knife Makers Guild would discover, the controversy lies not in how the linerlock works, but in who exactly invented it. The decision they were about to make would ultimately cause one of the biggest controversies in the knife world and change the way history is seen. Michael Walker was a jeweler in the 1970s, but after his wife gifted him a Gerber blade, he recognized the similarities between his jewelry work and the world of custom art knives. He began to experiment with fixed blades, but quickly realized that they weren't for him after a customer asked for a set of custom leather sheaths. It was a task Walker found so tedious that he vowed to only make folding knives in the future, and thus avoid the perils of sheath making. But to make a folding knife that was equally as capable as his fixed blades, Walker needed a locking system that could be operated with one hand and was also completely internal, so it didn't interrupt the shape of the design. After trying multiple different devices and going through rigorous testing, Walker finally found a formula that worked. He named his invention the linerlock and was granted a trademark for the name in 1989. Years later, prominent guild member Ron Lake would pass a motion to recognize Michael Walker as the inventor of this style of lock. When the Knife Makers Guild tallied up the votes, Walker's name was officially inked into the history books. It seemed like an obvious decision. The only problem was, this design had been used in knives for nearly a century before Walker. It first appeared on a US patent on August 4, 1905. That patent was filed by a man named William Franklin Watson. Not much is known about Watson, but the Pennsylvania resident described his invention as a resilient tongue which will spring over the surface of the blade and hold it in an open position. Since the entire design was essentially comprised of one piece, it was affordable, easy to manufacture, and provided extra safety over the non-locking slip joints that were common during this era. The design was licensed to the Cattaraugus Cutlery Company, who used it in a hunting folder. The date of Watson's patent approval can be seen stamped on the brass lock bar. When that patent expired in 1923, the lock became mainstream in products like the TL-29 electrician's knife. This two-bladed tool was commissioned by the US government for use by the Signal Corps. It was intended for electricians and linemen, and was equipped with a flathead screwdriver and wire stripper. The Watson spring lock was added to hold the screwdriver in place during use. This design would be manufactured by numerous different companies, notably names like Schrade, Ulster, and Camillus. It remained popular through World War II, though has ultimately been made nearly obsolete by modern multi-tools. Nonetheless, the existence of early Cattaraugus folders and the TL-29 makes it undeniable that Watson's leaf spring lock arrived decades before Walker ever touched a blade. Yet it's the innovations that Michael Walker added to the design that are what inspired many to recognize him as the true inventor. The original lock only bends a small portion at the end of the liner to engage the tang, while Walker's extends throughout the entire handle of the knife, making it stronger and more durable. While Watson's brass bar sticks up outside of the scales for easy access, Walker hid the lock bar inside to improve aesthetics. But perhaps the biggest improvement Walker made was the addition of the detent ball. The detent is a small knob on the end of the lock bar, which slides along the tang of the blade as it rotates before clicking into place when the folder is closed. This small addition makes a big difference in the action, providing friction when the blade is swinging, as well as a more secure closed position. In practice, the Walker liner lock can be used effortlessly with one hand, while the Watson TL-29 almost always needs two. The advent of Walker's design brought the liner lock to the forefront of the pocket knife industry. making it one of the most popular locking mechanisms in use today. But despite all of this innovation, knife enthusiast forums exploded with controversy following the guild's decision to recognize Walker over Watson. Collectors and knife makers around the world argued that Walker merely modernized the design, and that while his contributions certainly deserve recognition, he hardly invented the mechanism. The existence of tools like the TL29 makes it seem like the design is centuries old. But Walker's innovations have caused many to classify his changes as an entirely new lock, referring to the old TL29 as a spring lock rather than a liner lock. Today, both Watson's patent and Walker's trademark have long since expired, allowing the liner lock to be featured in thousands of unique knives. The Knife Maker Guild's decision has undeniably had an influence on the way history is told, as Michael Walker is credited with the invention by nearly every source, and only a rare few ever recognize Watson's contributions. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the controversy, and subscribe to hear more knife stories like this.